Have a little cheers.
Cheers, Christy.
Cheers.
So happy to have you.
Happy to be here. Incredibly happy to be here.
So, do you identify as psychic, or how when you explain to people that you have a gift, what do you tell them? Do you say I'm psychic, I can talk to people, I get premonitions? I mean, how do you describe yourself to people?
Well, I would say oftentimes I try to connect with somebody in the moment. And so it also might depend on what's coming through in that moment of how I could label myself. But normally I don't label myself. I do often speak to people's relatives that have passed over,
Yeah.
and that's probably my strongest gift.
That's insane. And I know for a fact that you definitely have a gift. I mean, when you first started coming over, you've said some incredible things to me that I was kind of shocked. I'm like, wait, how would she have had known that? There's no way, you know? So there's definitely a gift there. And I definitely believe in, I think for a lot of people, though, they think psychic, they think that, oh, you can't talk to me, and they think it's hooey.
Yeah, totally.
Have you ever been in a situation where you've kind of come in contact with somebody who was a total non-believer? You told them something and they were like, holy shit, like that really resonates with me, and no way you would have known that. It kind of made them think about it.
Yeah, actually, it happens all the time. And strangely enough, in like Ubers and Lyfts. I don't know why. But it's something that I won't say announce at first, but when I sense the energy of
Yeah.
the presence around them, I will just, it's almost like I can't control myself.
Yeah.
When it happens, I'll say, I'd like to give you a message from your father.
Yeah. Wow. So how does that come to you? Do you actually hear words? Do you see visions? It kind of sounds like, have you ever seen the show Long Island Medium?
Oh, totally.
With Teresa
Yeah.
Caputo? You guys kind of have the
I know.
same
It's like
hair
we got
going.
the same hair going, especially today. Yeah.
So I used to love watching her show, and we actually went and saw her when she came to San Diego. This is like over 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But we were way up in the nosebleeds. She didn't come read us or anything. But I loved that show, and I feel like that was kind of the moment where I was intrigued by it, and I thought, wow, I wonder like if that's real. Like, you know, I feel like unless you have the gift yourself, it's hard to really understand, like, and put yourself in somebody else's shoes if they can sense, they can feel, they can speak to people that have passed or to.
Sure. Well, it's interesting too. I've never actually charged someone for a reading because I don't do them in advance. For me, it has to all be spontaneous, and it's something that again I can't control.
Yeah.
It's something that comes through, I would say, my heart.
Yeah.
So I don't see anything, although I might be able to describe someone. It's not like I see the person, say, sitting in the passenger seat or something. It is all just feeling, and it's all through my heart.
There's people that either see things or hear things, but you don't really see or hear. You just feel it. Is that how it comes through for you?
Yes, it's an overwhelmingly, I would say, good feeling, but it's not as if that they're there to speak through me. I guess in a way, but it's not that I'm channeling them directly. It is almost that I sense them around them, and the feeling becomes so strong in my heart. If it's almost like I can't not share it.
Yeah.
And I've said that before to people that, you know, I hope I don't upset you by this, but I sense your mother, and then a message might come through, but it's all through emotion.
Yeah.
It's nothing in my mind or auditory or visual. It's just all through the
Wow.
heart.
When did you realize you had this gift?
Probably around 4 or 5, and that's because my family would say, "Don't worry about Christy. She just talks to the angels."
Really?
Yeah.
So people thought that you maybe just had an imaginary friend, or?
At first, they did. And then as I started pointing out some kind of different numerical facts, or even a shirt color of somebody that was their favorite,
Yeah.
it just became kind of known in my family that she just talks to the angels, and that's just what she does. And it was accepted at first,
Yeah.
but not later on.
So 4 or 5 years old, do you remember a moment where you thought that, oh my gosh, like I'm talking to somebody that's not here? Or did it, as a young child, was it just normal for you?
It was just normal for me. Not normal for other people,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But it was normal for me. And it's not like, yeah, like you said, like they weren't imaginary friends, because I would usually only see them once.
Mm. And it would be, I guess, dependent on where you were.
Depending, exactly.
So you didn't grow up in a house that had like spirits that.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it always depends on when spirit wants to show their presence as well. So we did have it, but it's not like I felt like our house was haunted or anything.
I think my house is haunted.
Well, it is, but
So many of my friends get so worked up when I tell them the house is haunted. Like, don't tell me that, don't tell me that. They get like so freaked out, and I'm like, they're not evil spirits.
Oh no,
it's good energy here.
It's really good energy. Everything's energy. So.
I've learned to coexist with the spirits in my house.
Absolutely.
With Phil.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I have to tell that story. One of the first times you ever came over. So I've been living here not even a year yet, and I had a couple friends living with me, and I just got a knock at the door one day, and you had come across the street, and I remember you had this long flowy dress on. You came over and you just started telling me about all the angels and the spirits in my house, and I was like, at first I was like, what the fuck?
Totally.
But then as you started talking about it, I was really intrigued, and I didn't think you were crazy. I thought you were very interesting, and I was really curious about what you had to say. And then you had said a few things that actually really resonated, and that I thought, wow, there's no way you actually would have known that. And so that kind of, made me a little more intrigued, I guess, to hear more about your gift and how that works for you. You've done like tarot readings and all sorts of stuff.
I love to come to the parties.
Yeah, I know you always would come to the party with good vibes.
Yeah, well, try. But what's one of your favorite stories about some of my call-outs, I suppose?
I'll never forget, you were over here one night, and I guess I have to give a little bit of a backstory, but I moved into this house about 3 years ago, and after I moved in, my grandfather, who my grandparents lived about a block away. I'm in, they very long time in this neighborhood, and my grandfather was a cabinet maker and really good like with woodworking, and he made a ton of clocks. And he had made this gigantic, huge grandfather clock. I'll have to put a picture of it in here that he handmade, and it was over at my grandma's house, a couple blocks away. And for literally about a year since I had moved in, I'd been trying to coordinate how the hell am I going to get this big grandfather clock from my grandma's house over to my house. And my dad's business partner had told me, for months, like, oh, I'm going to bring it over. And he never had. And so about maybe 3 or 4 months had gone by, and I totally kind of had forgotten about the clock. And you were over just hanging out. It was like a Thursday night. As we were just sitting and talking, you're like, hey, by the way, your grandfather's stepping forward right now, and he has a message for you. He's, you started just talking about, oh, he's like a really funny guy and saying all these things. And you said you're going to get a sign from him very soon. About 10 minutes goes by, and I get a phone call from my dad's business partner. And I answer the phone. He says, hey, Devin, it's, so-and-so. I'm down the street at your grandma's house. I have my guys here, and we're going to come up with your grandfather's clock right now. And I was like, wow. Because, again, we hadn't talked about this clock for months, and I had just kind of just put it at the back burner, having no intention of getting it anytime soon. And I was like, oh my God, you're kidding. And it was like at 10 p.m. on a Thursday night. And 5 minutes later, I get a knock at the door, and it's Ricky and all his guys with the big grandfather clock, and they hoisted it up into my house and put it in the spot where it is now. And so literally like less than 20 minutes after you said you're going to get a sign from your grandfather, all of a sudden, here's the grandfather clock that he handmade that I've been trying to get in my house for almost a year, and they brought it into the house. And I was like, that's so bizarre.
So bizarre. That's so much fun for me to be able to connect with people like you and with people on the other side like
So
that.
walk me through that if you can remember that specific instance or just anything like that. We're sitting just talking. How do you know that I'm going to get a sign from my grandfather?
Um, it's again, it's something that it almost overwhelms me in a very peaceful, positive way, and it's almost inexplainable that, thinking back to that story, that I felt a little more prompted, which was a little more unusual for me. That I had to come, I had to be over here, and it wasn't like I knew that I had to tell you that. I knew I had to be here, but I didn't know I was coming here to give you a message.
Yeah.
And so, just being here with you, just feeling that energy again, like you said, step forward, and the message being delivered and they're normally, I mean, for me, almost every time, messages of peace, of signs, of closure.
But how do you know how do you distinguish energy from another? How do you know that it's my grandfather versus like some other spirit in the house?
That's a great question. I believe because we all carry our own individual energetic imprints. And so that's how I think the energy comes through to me, is that their own energetic imprint is coming through versus another energetic imprint in the house.
You get a lot of signs and messages from spirits and source, and source to me is just what is source. That source is just the universe.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's just
The all.
yeah,
For me.
or God.
Or God, whatever we want to call it.
God is basically source, but depends if you're Christian, it's God. If you're Muslim, it's Allah. It's whatever. But I mean, fundamentally, all the major religions, I mean, it's all the same.
It's all the same. And that's one of my takes. And in fact, I upset my very religious grandfather when I was about 15. And I said, well, if I only grew up knowing the name Jesus or God, what would happen if I lived in another country and I woke up? Would I recognize them? How would that work? And he actually got very upset with me. He said, that's blasphemous. There's only really one way. And he was operating at his own level of awareness.
Yeah.
And I get that. But I do think it's all the same. It's just all called different names.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I grew up going to church on Sunday with my parents, and I freaking hated it.
Yeah, me too.
And that's the thing. I didn't resonate with it for a reason. Because then as I got older, I really just resonated with the fact that I'd say that I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious.
Yes.
And I don't think that anyone has to be religious.
Yes.
But it didn't resonate with me then. And I mean, I feel like that says a lot. You should listen to your internal dialogue. And I didn't feel like that was my journey.
Oh, yeah, absolutely wasn't, or you would still be on it.
Yeah.
But I was the same. I left my church at 14. Very similar story. It was not resonating with me. And I became the family black sheep completely.
Really?
Very, very religious family. So it was very difficult for me, but that's how strongly I knew that my beliefs were different from what I was learning. Not that there wasn't value, and I have found some value in reviewing those certain texts from that religion, but I just knew, with all of my being that something outside of me, someone say sitting in the clouds, say we have a stereotypical representation. I just felt that wasn't it for me, that I'm the one that would be maybe not in control, but kind of regulating or resonating with where I needed to be versus other people telling me that this is how it works without free thought.
Yeah. You knew you had this gift, and then you enter corporate America.
Yes.
And what is it like trying to assimilate into a society that is so opposite of what you're feeling internally? But we're all programmed in this country to just work, and make the money and 9 to 5 and go, and that's just our way of life.
It is our way of life, and it's interesting because I had to shut those gifts down. And I didn't realize at first, like it wasn't intentional saying, I don't want these gifts anymore. But it became that way as I moved further and further out of alignment of what my heart and intuition was telling me. And I wanted to be a rock star. It's funny. I found my goals the other day from 20 years ago. I wanted to sing. I wanted to have my own recording label. All of these really creative gifts. I love to write music, and with the way my father was, and he did his best at his own level of awareness, but he was very old school that no, I need to go to college and you need to get a serious degree, because I went to college and then I started in music producing. And he said, no, that's not good enough. And at that point, and there was a period of time where my family would make so much fun of me for, talking to the angels. It was accepted until I was around maybe like 10 to 12. Then it became, oh, she's the crazy one in the family.
Yeah.
So I started to kind of shy away. And then I'd meet friends who understood me, as we often do around those ages.
Yeah.
But I really had to shut a lot of it down as I went into, after I shifted out of the music producing and I had to get this, quote, serious job, and I did end up graduating with a bachelor's in business and accounting, completely opposite, because anybody that knew me or even would know me now would never think I was an accountant.
Yeah.
A corporate accountant at that.
I am so bad with my money, especially when I'm drinking. When I'm drinking, I need to be in a conservatorship. I cannot have access to my funds. I will literally tip the pizza guy $50 because I actually remember I was down in San Diego out with some friends, like 2:30 in the morning. Everything's closed, and this is a few years ago. But I was so fucked up after the club, and I went and I bought like a slice of pizza just somewhere in downtown San Diego, and I literally tipped the guy like $50, and I was like, "You're literally saving my life right now. You don't have any idea how much like you mean to me." And I'm like, I was like, there was no concept of money when you're in that.
There's zero. We know
I
that.
could never be an accountant.
Yeah, and it was very far from who I was and maybe who I am, although it's still a part of me. But it was one of my professors, actually, that convinced me to go into accounting because I could memorize well. I took like a 101 class, and this was after music producing. I was going to do marketing, something more creative again. Even though that went against my father, I was willing to go a little bit there. And she said, you'd be crazy not to go into accounting because you can work anywhere in any economy. She gave me all the reasons, and I ended up changing my major because then I talked to my dad about it, right? And he goes, "Oh yeah, well of course that's what you're supposed to do." He'd been leaving me business articles since I was like 10, so I talked to him about it. I said, it's going to take a whole other year to get through. And he said, well, you should absolutely do it. And that's why I went into accounting. And because my uncle was an accountant, my brother was an accountant. It wasn't anything I was passionate about.
Yeah.
They were things that other people told me that even though I wasn't in resonance with, at the time, not understanding who I was and just trying to make my father proud, I would just go for it that way and not listen to myself.
When you entered the workforce and doing accounting, you've got to tell the story about the Jack in the Box thing.
Yes. So it was kind of fun. Well, a lot of fun. So I worked at Jack in the Box as a senior corporate auditor quite a while ago.
But Jack in the Box, if you don't live in the western part of the United States, it's just fast food chain, big fast food chain. And they didn't accept credit cards. So we thought there was a team of us that thought it would be a good idea for a fast food restaurant to accept credit cards. So we implemented credit cards at one of the major fast food chains, and other chains were interested. And in fact, they would come to that company and talk about food safety and quality because there had been some issues. They were often the best at training the other restaurants. And so we led the way at the time of all the fast food restaurants implementing credit cards. So this is 2001 or 2. And back then, no fast food place accepted credit cards?
Not that I know of.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you paved the way for us to be able to tap our phones at the drive-thru and pay for our food in the drive-thru.
Yes, well, at least at Jack, we could at least claim that. But we did help consult with some other companies that might have only deployed a few locations. But how do you do something, on a pretty large basis?
So one thing that most people probably don't know about you is that you have a really large Twitter following.
Yeah, most people except for the followers, people around me don't know that.
You have this amazing spiritual, positive Twitter or I guess X, I guess now it is. How did you get started on Twitter?
Well, it was back in March of 2020 when the COVID shutdown happened. And I was then told to come and work at home as everybody was. And as I'm at home, I was becoming more and more fearful. I think a lot of people were. This was all so new for everyone.
Yeah.
But I also my gifts had been coming back to me stronger and uncontrolled by me. And then COVID happened. So March 2020, I felt like, again, my gifts are coming back, but I couldn't identify them as my gifts. It was just something is happening to me and I'm starting to feel crazy. Like literally, I'm seeing things differently. And I was...
So were your gifts, were you not spiritual for a while?
Oh, yeah, many, many, many years.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I shut it all down. It would pop out uncontrollably for maybe a relative at a relative's funeral, something like that, where
you got caught up in corporate America for too many years.
Completely caught up.
So one day in 2020, you just all of a sudden were saying, holy shit, like, I need to fucking talk to dead people again.
Yeah, like it, and I didn't even realize it as much as that. But yeah, something, and my heart, I would feel the palpitations and I'd feel things in my stomach. The more I resisted, the more my body told me, like, you're out of alignment. And I couldn't have explained it this way back then. But I knew I wanted to get away from Facebook and get away from anywhere that my friends or family could find me. That something so different was happening to me. I wanted to vanish, but still like see the news or see whatever.
Yeah.
So I just was like, well, nobody's on Twitter that I know.
Yeah.
So I'll just go there so I can get news and like also see the local events happening.
Yeah.
Because that was something newer for me.
Yeah.
As some of the larger events were happening. But that was the first intent, was literally to disappear from my family and friends, off Facebook, off the other social medias, and just express myself for the first time as myself.
What made you send out your first tweet? And did you ever have the intention of gaining a following?
No, in fact, I don't think I've ever used a hashtag. And I think once when I was calling out a shoe company for tripping or something like that, but I've never intentionally tried to gain followers on Twitter or X. It was something that organically happened, and to this day, I don't feel like when I say anything that it goes anywhere. Like, I could be sitting on the toilet tweeting, and I have no awareness that anybody's looking at it because it became my journal. And that's how I started tweeting, and still do to this day. It started as a journal, and I started expressing myself of all of the suppressed emotion of things like that we're talking about, some deeper traumas. I started connecting with people that did the same. And we have this still community that I don't think any of us intended that we would have larger followings. It completely was accidental.
What is your message to somebody listening right now that totally just believes that you're just full of shit?
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of people that totally believe that. My message for those people, and I would welcome the conversations too.
Yeah.
Even a Q&A with it. I mean, I would love that too. I'd love to be put on the spot. My message would be, don't listen to me. Listen to yourself. And if there's a part of what I'm saying, if you're open and even if there's a little part that resonates, go and research it yourself. find different spiritual teachers. There are a lot that are full of shit. I mean, they are there to make money.
Yeah.
Period. And they will say anything. I'm not like that. I don't need to do that, and I don't think anybody needs to do that. But that would be my advice: is don't listen to me. Listen to what called to you. Of, you know, say there was 1% and the 100%. It's like maybe there is something there. I would say go and find that within themselves, and call bullshit on me. And to keep doing it with spiritual leaders. Like, I don't think we should ever miss an opportunity to hold our leaders accountable, whoever they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how can everybody find you on Twitter?
Oh, well, thank you. It's Finding My Way to Love, which is spelled FINDINMYT. No, 2.
The number
LUV,
2.
Number 2. This is how bad, like, I don't ever even give this out because it just, but I think it's kind of funny. I chose that handle, Finding My Way to Love, because that's what I found. But the place I went to was learning how to love myself.
I love that. Well, I'll put the link to your Twitter in the description of this video. Anybody that wants to go follow Chrissy, definitely go check her out. And
thank you.
I'm so happy to have you. And I can't wait for you to come back with the big life update and more downloads from Source.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I would cheers you, but
Cheersy.
that's about it. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one. We'll see you on the next one.